I knew the man mowing the lawn wasn't David, even though he wore David's face, because David was left-handed, and this guy was holding the weed whacker with his right. That kind of detail is invisible to 99% of the population. People see what they expect to see. They see a polo shirt, khakis, a receding hairline, and a friendly wave, and their brain fills in the rest. Oh, that's David Miller, they think. He works in actuaries. He drives a silver Toyota Camry. He hates crabgrass. But I don't operate on autopilot. I have a home office that faces the street, a surplus of insomnia, and a background in logistics that makes me allergic to inconsistency. And 42 Oak Lane is a monument to inconsistency. The man operating the weed whacker, let's call him David 4.0, paused. He wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his wrist. The real David, or at least David 1.0, the one who moved in 2 years ago, always used a handkerchief kept in his back left pocket. This new guy didn't have one. He looked at the house, glanced at the second-story window where his wife was supposedly watching, and then went back to trimming the edge of the driveway. His technique was sloppy. David 1.0 was a surgeon with the edger. This guy was a butcher. I zoomed in with my camera. Not a creep shot, just documentation. I use a Nikon D850 with a 200mm lens, ostensibly for birdwatching. The only bird I've watched in 6 months is the plastic flamingo Mrs. Higgins puts out in October. Through the lens, I saw the scar, or rather, the lack of one. David 1.0 had a small jagged scar just above his right eyebrow, a cycling accident he told me about at the block party last July. David 2.0, who replaced him in November, had a bandage there for a week, then a fake scar applied with theatrical makeup. I saw it smear once when it rained. David 4.0, smooth skin. They were getting lazy. I lowered the camera and picked up my logbook.
Date, June 14th. Subject, the resident at number 42. Discrepancy, dominant hand swap, lack of facial scarring. Gait is heavier, favoring the left knee. David 3.0 favored the right. I've lived in this subdivision for 10 years. It's the kind of place where the HOA measures the grass height with a ruler and fines you for leaving your garage door open for more than 20 minutes. It is a cage of rules, and cages are excellent for observation because any deviation screams. The Millers moved in 2 years ago. At first, they were boring, aggressively boring. But 3 months in, I saw the first swap. A black SUV pulled into their garage at 3 a.m. The garage door closed. An hour later, the SUV left. The next morning, David walked out to get the paper, but he was an inch taller. I thought I was crazy. I gaslit myself for a week. But then I noticed the wife, Sarah. Sarah 1.0 drank tea on the porch every morning at 7:15 a.m. Sarah 2.0 drank coffee. I know because I checked their recycling bin on collection day. That's when the obsession started. I needed to know what number 42 actually was. Was it a witness protection holding tank? A safe house for foreign intelligence? A weird social experiment? I watched David 4.0 finish the lawn. He powered down the trimmer and walked toward the garage. He hit the keypad to open the door. He punched in the code. The door didn't open. He tried again. Nothing. David 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0 all used the code 5198. I'd seen them do it 100 times. David 4.0 stood there, freezing. He looked panicked. He looked around the street, checking if anyone was watching. He didn't see me behind my blinds. He pulled a small laminated card out of his pocket, squinted at it, and then punched in a new number. The door opened. They changed the codes for the new batch. Rookie mistake. He hadn't memorized it yet. That night, I decided to push. Observation is passive. Intelligence gathering requires friction.
I needed to see how well this new actor knew his role. I waited until 6 p.m., the time David always checked the mail. I timed my exit perfectly. As he reached for the mailbox, I walked down my driveway, feigning an interest in a non-existent weed in my cracks. "Hey, David," I called out. He flinched. It was a micro-expression, gone in an instant, replaced by a practiced plastic smile. "Hey, neighbor." He didn't know my name. David 3.0 knew my name was Arthur. We'd discussed gutter cleaning 2 weeks ago. "How's the hip?" I asked. "You were complaining about it last week." This was the trap. David 3.0 had sciatica. David 4.0 blinked. His eyes darted to the left, accessing memory or searching for a script. "Oh, much better," he said, patting his right hip. "Yoga, you know. Sarah's got me doing it." "Glad to hear it," I said, stepping closer. "And how is Sarah? Is she still worried about her mother?" Her mother? He looked blank. The surgery, I pressed. She mentioned her mom was going in for heart surgery in Cleveland. There was no mother. There was no surgery. I had invented it on the spot. If he was a real neighbor, he'd look confused. He'd say, "What? Sarah's mom died 10 years ago." Instead, David 4.0 nodded solemnly.
Yeah, it's touch and go. We're praying.
I'll keep her in my thoughts, I said. Tell Sarah I said hi. Will do, Arthur, will do. He turned and walked briskly back to the house. He had guessed my name was Arthur because it's on my mailbox, but he had failed the logic test. He was playing a role, improving his way through a conversation he hadn't been prepped for. I went back inside, my heart hammering against my ribs. This wasn't just weird, it was professional. They were actors, but for what audience? The answer came 3 days later, on trash day. Usually, the Millers were meticulous, shredded documents, generic waste, but the handover between 3.0 and 4.0 had been sloppy. Maybe they were rushing.
I waited until 2 a.m. The streetlights buzzed, casting long orange shadows across the asphalt. I crept across the lawn, dressed in black, feeling ridiculous but compelled. I opened their bin. Right on top, beneath a bag of coffee grounds, was a crushed cardboard box. It was for a high-end vocal modulator. Why would a suburban actuary need a vocal modulator? I dug deeper. I found a crumpled piece of paper, stained with grease. I smoothed it out under my penlight. It wasn't a receipt. It was a critique sheet, like a report card. Subject, male lead, batch 3. Performance rating, C-. Notes, subject failed to maintain accent consistency during the block party. Eye contact too aggressive. Need to dial back the friendly neighbor archetype by 15%. Reminder, the goal is invisibility, not popularity. Action, recycle subject, deploy batch 4 immediately. I stared at the paper, recycle subject. The chill that went down my spine wasn't from the night air. Recycle didn't sound like they were firing him. It sounded industrial. I took the paper and retreated to my house. I sat in the dark, watching number 42. It wasn't a witness protection program. Witness protection tries to hide you. This was a training camp. Think about it. Where is the hardest place for a spy to operate? Not a war zone. In a war zone, chaos is camouflage. The hardest place is the American suburbs. The neighbors are nosy. The routine is rigid. Deviance is spotted immediately. If you can infiltrate a cul-de-sac, you can infiltrate anything. Number 42 was a simulator, a final exam for deep cover operatives before they were sent out into the real world. They had to live here, as the Millers, for 3 months. If they fooled the neighbors, they passed. If they slipped up, like David 3.0 being too friendly, they were recycled. And I was the judge they didn't know they had. Or so I thought. The next morning, things shifted.
I was drinking my coffee, watching the house, when I saw the blinds at number 42 separate, just a sliver. And I was watching me back. It wasn't David 4.0. It was someone else. Someone older. I pulled back instantly, my heart jumping into my throat. Had I been made? The trash raid. I hadn't been careful enough. The rest of the day was a paranoid blur. Every car that drove by felt slow, predatory. I checked my own locks 3 times. I backed up my hard drive with all the photos of the Davids and Sarahs and hid the USB drive inside the hollow leg of my desk. At 4 p.m., a van pulled up. Not a plumber's van, a generic white van with no plates. 2 men got out. They wore gray jumpsuits. They carried a large, ruggedized case. They walked straight to my front door. They didn't knock on number 42. They knocked on my door. I froze in the hallway. I held my breath. Knock, knock, knock. "Mr. Henderson?" a voice called. "We know you're home. We just want to talk about the garbage." They knew. I had 2 choices. Hide and wait for them to kick the door in, or bluff. I opened the door. The man in front was in his 50s, buzz-cut, eyes like flint. He held up the grease-stained report card I had stolen. "You dropped this," he said. "I don't know what that is." I lied. "Mr. Henderson?" he sighed, looking bored. "You've been logging the rotations for 18 months. You have 3 gigabytes of telephoto surveillance on your hard drive.
You know exactly what that is. My stomach dropped. Who are you? Quality control, he said. He didn't push his way in. He just stood there. We have a problem. The current simulation is compromised. David 4.0 is awash. He can't handle the pressure. But the problem isn't him. It's you. I stiffened. I'm calling the police. You can, he said calmly, but the police works for the city, and the city doesn't know number 42 exists. Look, Arthur, you're observant. You're paranoid.
You notice details that the average civilian ignores. The dominant hand swap, the scar consistency. Impressive work. He paused, tilting his head. We don't usually intervene. Usually, if a neighbor gets too close, we just buy their house and move them to Florida. But you're talented. I'm not interested in whatever you're selling, I said, gripping the door handle. We're not selling anything. We're hiring. He gestured to number 42. We spend millions training operatives to blend in, he said, but we have a shortage of effective testers. We need people who can spot the flaws, people who can tell when a smile is fake or when a backstory doesn't align. We've been monitoring your surveillance of our surveillance. Your notes are better than our internal instructors. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. It was blank, except for a phone number. The current David and Sarah will be evacuated tonight. A new couple will move in on Tuesday, batch 5. They are being prepped for a long-term infiltration in Moscow. They need to be perfect. If you can spot them breaking character within the first week, we'll pay you $10,000, cash. I stared at the card. And if I say no? Then we buy your house, he said, and you move to Florida. It's humid there, Arthur, and the neighbors are very, very boring. He placed the card on the porch railing. Tuesday, watch for the moving truck. They turned and walked back to the van. They drove away. I stood there for a long time. I looked at number 42. The house was quiet, the plastic facade of the American dream. That night at 3 a.m., the black SUV returned. I watched from the dark of my office. I didn't take photos this time. I didn't need to. I saw David 4.0 and Sarah 4.0 walk out. They looked tired, defeated. They got into the back seat. The car drove off, taking their fake lives with them. The house sat empty, a stage waiting for the next act. I looked at the blank card on my desk.
I'm a creature of habit. I like my neighborhood. I like my routine. And I really, really hate moving.
Tuesday came. A U-Move-It truck rattled up the street. A young couple jumped out. The guy was wearing a backwards baseball cap and carrying a guitar case. The girl was holding a box of books. They looked chaotic, messy, and young. They looked incredibly real. I picked up my binoculars. The guy laughed at something she said. He threw his head back. It was a genuine laugh. The throat muscles engaged correctly. The eyes crinkled. But then he went to lift a heavy box. He bent at the waist, not the knees. I frowned. He was wearing a shirt that said CrossFit, but he lifted like someone with a bad back trying to hide it. I opened my notebook. Date, June 18th. Subject, the new residence. Discrepancy. Posture does not match wardrobe branding. Potential injury concealment. I picked up the phone and dialed the number on the card. Batch 5 has arrived, I said when the voice answered. What do you see? The man asked. The husband is faking his fitness level, I said, zooming in on his hands. And he's wearing a wedding ring that's too loose. He keeps checking it with his thumb. He's not used to wearing it. Good, the voice said. Keep watching. I hung up. I watched the new neighbor trip on the curb, drop the box, and curse. It was a good performance, almost perfect, but I saw him glance at the window of the house across the street, Mrs. Gable's house, checking his angles. I smiled. Suburban life can be so monotonous. You wake up, you go to work, you mow the lawn. But if you look closely, if you really look, you realize that everyone is pretending to be something they're not. The Millers next door just happen to be professionals. And me? I'm not just the neighbor anymore. I'm the audience, and the show must go on. I closed the blinds, just a crack, and turned the page in my logbook.